Yes, Amit bhai, shall we start now? Amit bhai?
Yes, you can start.
We can start, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, good evening to all our members. I welcome you all for our today's study circle meeting on the topic of this complex topic from baseless assessment to faceless assessment, a paradigmic shift. It's a great honor for our study circle to have CA Amit Bhai Patel, uh, a very knowledgeable and an experienced person. He has been practicing as a chartered accountant since 1986 and qualified with an All India rank. He is currently a partner and head of Mumbai branch of Manohar Chaudhary and Associates. I'll briefly state some of his achievements. He was a past president of BCS and currently a chairman in the taxation committee. He has even been a member of finance and taxation panel of CII Western region. He is an independent director in LIC Housing Finance Limited and SBM Bank India Limited. With this brief introduction, I request CA Amit Bhai Patel to kindly guide us and educate our members on this complex topic for the shift of this paradigmic shift from baseless assessment to faceless assessment. Even I request all the members to kindly put their questions in the Q&A tab. And once the presentation is over, we'll open the session for discussions. And after that, once the presentation is over, Amit Bhai will be answering their questions. Is it fine, Amit Bhai? Shall we take question and answers at the end only after the presentation?
Yeah. The advantage of that is that many people would have left by then, so there will be fewer questions. Yeah.
No. That doesn't happen here, sir.
All right.
Ajay, कोई तुमने छोड़ से नहीं अभी तक. Don't worry.
It is a very hot topic and complex one.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So shall we start?
Definitely, Amit Bhai. We can start.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much to the conveners of the Vilaypale Study Circle and to my friend Gautam Shah for requesting me to take up this topic. One thing I've noticed is that the Vilaypale Study Circle has called me several times to speak only on this topic of e-assessment or e-TD, e-tax audit, etc. I think, they have taken a decision that till this guy learns the topic properly, we'll keep on calling him again and again, So thank you for calling me once again to speak on this subject where electronic governance is involved. This is a new topic. This is, as was rightly mentioned by the introducer, that this is a new topic and also a hot topic. And all of us are in the same boat as far as understanding how or trying to figure out how it will work out in the future, etc. But let us see at least theoretically what it is supposed to be, how it is supposed to be, and then have patience, have faith in God, have faith in the income tax department, and have faith in our Prime Minister that everything will work out smoothly. The topic I suggested to Gautam is this, that from baseless assessments to faceless assessments, a paradigm shift. The reason why I suggested this is that in the past, whatever assessments that we have had for last so many years, many times there have been complaints that there are, high-pitched assessment, there are ridiculous additions, assessing officers just don't apply their minds, and they make additions for the sake of making additions, for the sake of raising demands. They even tell you that I'm going to make this addition, मुझे पता है अपील में आप जीत जाओगे, तो लेकिन I am forced to make the addition. So most of the times, many of us felt that these are all baseless assessments. From that one extreme, we are now coming to absolutely another extreme, where the assessments will be faceless, where the human interaction between two individuals, on the other side of the table the assessing officer, and on this side of the table the taxpayer or his representative, that interaction will not happen. So that is a complete paradigm shift that we will be seeing now. We have had a glimpse of that in the last few months when we saw the e-assessment happening. For 1 year, we have seen how the assessments were conducted electronically. But the difference between then and now is that at that time we knew who the officer is. The officer knew who we are. It was only that everything was done electronically. And in many cases, we all know that ultimately we have to do it both ways. electronically submit everything, and then go and give a hard copy to the officer unofficially or informally. Those days are gone, and we will now have a completely online assessment procedure. And therefore, it is important that we chartered accountants, the tax professionals, whose major area of practice depends on tax compliances and tax representations, litigation, etc. We understand what this is, and we therefore prepare ourselves for this, because whether or not it is a paradigm shift from baseless to faceless, it will definitely be a paradigm shift for chartered accountants, because all that we have been doing for last, right from the first day of the Income Tax Act 1961. Of course, many of us are not that old, but right from the day we started our practice till last year, the way we have been attending to assessments is going to completely change. The focus now will be not only, of course, on the Income Tax Act, but also on technology and how to cope with technology and how to deal with the electronic governance. Therefore, it is definitely a paradigm shift for all of us, and therefore we must take it up seriously. So with this, I will now switch off my video so that it stops distracting our attention from the presentation. The presentation has been shared with the conveners, and I suppose they will share it with all the participants subsequently. Yeah. Basically, a disclaimer first that long sentences are there, but bottom line is Michami Dukram. If errors and omissions accepted, and Bolchuk Levi Devi. There is a long list of points or issues that we will try to cover today. First, beginning with the introduction to the whole concept of e-assessment, etc. Then the technological initiatives on the part of the government. There is a reference to the CAS. And then we come to the faceless assessment, under which we will see what is going to be the structure of the department, how the digital transformation is going to take place, what actually is the assessment procedure, what about personal hearing, if any, and then how the penalties would be levied, how the appellate proceeding would be conducted. And finally, what are the issues that we are likely to face in the faceless assessments. And as by way of a sort of annexure or appendix, I've given a list of all the notifications and the relevant orders which have been already issued by the government or the CBDT, as the case may be, to bring into effect the faceless assessment scheme. So broadly, this is what we would like to cover. I may also mention one more thing, that some of you are aware that I am connected with the BCA Society. It was mentioned in my introduction also. So BCA Taxation has organized it is not yet announced, but I am now making it public, that on next Wednesday, in all probability, we have invited one of the members of the CBDT to address us on faceless assessments. You will get the announcement very soon. And I know someone's mic is on and is out. Okay. So that program will be announced very shortly. And I invite all of you to attend that, because we will hear it from the horse's mouth about the faceless assessments. Some of the queries which will be taken up today, and which, if I do not have any answers, or where we collectively do not have answers, we will take it up before the CBDT member on Wednesday, so that we get resolution of those queries. With that, let me begin. You are aware that the government has implemented various steps to reduce the human interface between tax administration and the taxpayers, to bring in consistency, transparency, and reduce the hardships faced by the taxpayers, and pioneering ways for pioneering ways for completion of assessment through the use of information technology. And in this whole initiative, some of the key steps taken by the government were selection of scrutiny cases through the CAS, then sending of digital notices to the email and configuring the portal, that is the e-filing portal, to meet the technical ends. The constant electronic exchange of information with other government departments by the income tax department. Then very importantly, using information in the AIR data, CIB information, reconciliation of returns with the 26AS, etc. And this obviously is going to now become even more important as compared to the past, because we all know that the format of the 26AS has been amended drastically, and substantial number of data, a substantial number of transactions will now be also reported in the 26AS through the reporting agencies wherever the financial transactions are entered into by the taxpayer. And usage of assessment information system, AST application, and then finally the e-assessment or faceless assessment system. The CAS is very important because there has been constant reference to the CAS, both even in the the budget speeches as well as in the interaction with the various officers of the income tax department. CBDT has substantially changed the assessment procedures by bringing in the CAS for selection of cases for the scrutiny. This has therefore reduced the manual intervention in the process of selection of cases, and it is this computer aided scrutiny selection, that is CAS, is used for selection of scrutiny cases using system based centralized approach based on detailed analysis of the risk parameters and 360-degree data profiling of the taxpayers. This 360-degree data profiling is also very important because it takes into account external data put up by taxpayers or by others on even on social media platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn, etc. We recently saw a case where one of the big four was, strictures were passed against one of the big four on the basis of the profiles of some of their employees on LinkedIn. And therefore, the government has become extremely sharp and smarter through the use of artificial intelligence, data analytics, etc., and which includes the 360-degree data profiling of the taxpayers. Then there was the TARC, or the Tax Administration Reforms Commission, which was set up by the government for recommending the tax reforms. This TARC reviewed the application of tax policies and tax laws in the context of global best practices. They recommended measures for reforms required in the tax administration, and the mandate was that whatever they suggest or the measures, those measures should enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of the department. It would be important to highlight an extract of the TARC report, which says that currently the general perception amongst taxpayers is that the tax administration is focused on only one dimension, that of revenue generation. This perception gains strength from the manner in which goals are set at each functional unit of both the direct and indirect departments, indirect tax departments. Therefore, the whole system of goal setting, performance assessment, incentivization, and promotion appears to be focused on only this dimension. This single-minded revenue focus can never meet the criteria of the mission and values mentioned above. What is required is a robust framework that is holistic in its approach to issues of performance management. This is very important because this, I think, forms the basis for all the sweeping changes that have been announced in the recent past and also in the not so recent past. And the concept of honoring the honest, which the Prime Minister spoke about, and bringing in transparency in the tax laws, etc. I think all these are basically driven by the observations in the TARC, as well as by the severe criticism that the government and the Income Tax Department faced over the months, over the years, for the manner in which the tax laws were being administered. And therefore, we now have the faceless assessment scheme. The introduction to this was by way of introduction to e-assessment in the union budget of for the financial year 1819 by the then finance minister, late Mr. Arun Jaitley. And again, to repeat an extract from the speech, he had said that we had introduced e-assessment in 2016 on a pilot basis, and in 2017 extended it to 102 cities with the objective of reducing the interface between the department and the taxpayers. With the experience gained so far, we are now ready to roll out the e-assessment across the country, which will transform the age-old assessment procedure of the income tax department and the manner in which they interact with taxpayers and other stakeholders. Accordingly, I propose to amend the Income Tax Act to notify a new scheme for assessment where the assessment will be done in electronic mode, which will almost eliminate the person-to-person contact, leading to greater efficiency and transparency. So this was a very important announcement made in the budget speech by Mr. Jaitley. And to translate that into action, there were lots of amendments brought about. One of the amendments was to define e-assessment. And it says that e-assessment means the assessment proceedings conducted electronically in e-proceeding facility through SSC's registered account in a designated portal, which is therefore the income tax e-filing portal. And the term e-assessment has subsequently been further amended to even mean faceless assessment. So the base was laid down, and we therefore now have the faceless assessment. What would be the objectives of faceless assessment? Unless we understand what is the objective, there is no point in talking further, because if the objectives are not understood, then the various steps taken, the way in which it has been rolled out, and the nuts and bolts would not be understood by us, and therefore there would be unnecessary and unjust criticism of the same. So let us first look at the objectives. And unless we understand the objectives, we would not be responding appropriately to the notices that we get or to the way the department conducts these assessments. So the objective was to implement a robust scheme where taxpayer will not be made aware of the AO who would be carrying out the assessment in his case, and to eliminate the interface between the taxpayer and the tax department, to impart greater transparency and accountability, optimizing the utilization of resources of the tax department, be it human or technical, through economies of scale. This is also very important from a national perspective, because they want to achieve economies of scale. Obviously, we all understand what it means, that they will be trying to cut down the size of the government machinery. They will be trying to reduce the manpower. And we have seen that happening, especially in Mumbai, that wherever somebody retires from the income tax department, generally that position is not filled up. So they have reduced the number of new people that they have started recruiting, and therefore this is obviously in the larger scheme of things, which is achieving economies of scale. Then to enhance functional specialization in all areas. I think this particular line is very important, to enhance functional specialization in all areas, because often we have heard criticism or concerns that, and I've also been voicing these concerns sometimes on social media, that for example a complex case of a taxpayer based in Mumbai in a very highly specialized business, how would an officer who is located in a small town in, say, Rajasthan, or a small town in, say, Orissa, how would that officer who has had no background of these kind of taxpayers or this kind of businesses, how would that person be able to deal with a complex case? And I think the objective of the government is very clear, that they want to enhance the functional specialization in all areas, which I would take it to mean that they will therefore train their officers properly so that they are able to handle all kinds of cases, all kinds of assessments. Then to envisage team-based assessment with dynamic jurisdiction. This is also very important, and it's a huge change from what we have had in the past. In the past, we have had to deal with only one AO. At the most, he may be reporting to his, additional CIT or joint CIT, etc. But that senior comes into the picture only occasionally. But otherwise, we dealt with only one person. Now it will be a team that will be doing the assessment, and it is not a one man or a one person matter, but a multi person or a team assessment that will happen. And dynamic jurisdiction. So that itself will help in ensuring that there is no interaction between the tax officer and the taxpayer, and that there is no vested interest created of any kind in any particular matter, and there is constant rotation of work amongst the different people in the team that will be doing the assessments. And to ensure that the tax assessments are technically sound and that consistent tax positions are taken on various issues to avoid prolonged and unnecessary litigation. Now, if this particular objective, if it is actually an objective, then I think we should all be very thankful to the government that they are bringing this, because we have seen that in so many cases the assessments are absurd and are not sound. They are made, for example, take the case of disallowance of bad debts. Now, despite all conditions being satisfied as laid down in the Income Tax Act, if the bad debts are yet disallowed, I would feel that that's not a technically sound assessment, and it is bound to be knocked out in appeal. And therefore, those kind of additions have got to be avoided on the part of the department. And secondly, the consistent tax positions need to be taken across the department. We have seen how different positions are taken by different officers, by different ranges in different cities, and therefore there is no consistency. And hopefully, now that the department has centralized itself in terms of assessments, in terms of the technical units and the review units, etc., we hope that now the stands will be consistent across the nation, and that the additions, if any, made in the assessment orders are technically sound. So that then comes the real satisfaction of going into appeal and really fighting on merits instead of fighting on frivolous grounds. Pilot project that CBDT had has rolled out for faceless assessment was they conducted inquiry by sending queries and receiving responses thereto through emails. This is what I was talking about, that we had the experience last year. The responses received have been verified for completing assessment proceedings using the e-assessment scheme. The cases are selected based on AIR, CIB, etc., etc. Consent has been obtained from the taxpayers to carry out the assessment proceedings using the newly introduced e-assessment scheme. This is the past. In the past, we all remember we got emails asking us that, do you agree to go ahead with e-assessment, or would you want a physical assessment? This is all now of academic interest. There is no question of saying, no, I don't want physical, I don't want e-assessment. There is a mandatory e-assessment. Only in very restricted cases there would be a possibility of having a physical, and that also it will not be physical, as we come later to one of the slides. It will be through video conferencing. The legal framework, this is all again the past 2016 and 17 notifications were issued to bring out the procedures, formats and standards for ensuring safe transmission of e-communications. There was introduction of clause 23C in section 2 to define the term, to amend the definition of the word hearing, and to say that hearing includes communication of data and documents through electronic mode. So this this still leaves a room open or a door open for certain things to be submitted through other than electronic mode. Let us see how this whole concept evolves over the next few months. The instruction number 8 of 29 September 2017 it was issued to cover all the cases which were getting time barred by limitation during FY 17-18. Okay, this is all about 17-18 and 18-19, so maybe we can skip that because that is already over and we all have gone through that. But more importantly, the amendments in the law itself in section 143. Gautam and Jainam and whoever else is in charge, if I'm going too fast, do let me know. Then I'll slow down. But otherwise, I'll continue as it is.
Amit, it is okay. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. And is there going to be a break where you will provide electronic snacks or something, or nothing?
Nothing.
I have ordered from Sri Krishna. Don't worry, it will come to your house.
Thank you.
Home delivery.
Okay, section 143 was amended to facilitate the e-assessment, and subsection 3A was brought in to bring about the whole, to incorporate the e-assessment scheme into the assessment section. So subsection 3A says that the central government may make a scheme. So it empowers the government to come out with a scheme, to notify a scheme, to impart greater efficiency, transparency, and accountability by eliminating the interface between AO and the SSC, etc., etc. So basically, whatever was mentioned in the budget speeches by the earlier finance ministers was translated into action by bringing the amendment in section 143(3) itself, and in the law itself now they have brought in the whole objective of coming out with the e-assessment. So I think this is good because this makes it easier for us to challenge something in future if the whole scheme is not implemented in the right spirit. So as professional bodies, whether it's the institute or the BCAS or anybody else, this is important to note that the Act itself now talks about these things like efficiency, transparency, accountability, optimum utilization of resources, etc., eliminating the interface. If these are violated for whatever reasons, I think it would be a violation of the Income Tax Act, and it can certainly be taken up in the and it can be certainly challenged in the appellate forums. So section 3A and then you have 3B, which sort of give effect to the budget speeches. Then the CBDT took the initiative and introduced the scheme itself in 2019, the e-assessment scheme 2019, and which has now been amended as faceless assessment by notification number 60. So notification number 60 and 61 are very important. I've highlighted them in the appendix where I've listed down all the notifications. But all of us, I think, need to keep those two notifications very handy with us. Give it to all our staff members also, because they are basically what will drive the whole faceless assessment scheme going forward. The CBDT issued an order under section 119 to direct that all assessment orders shall be passed through NEAC through the faceless assessment scheme 2019. This was done in August. Now, obviously, I feel that while the faceless assessment and all that was announced by the finance minister in the last budget, it would have not been pushed so aggressively and in such a mandatory manner unless so it has been pushed like this primarily because of COVID-19. It is because of COVID that all of us are stuck at home. Of course, many bravehearts like Gautam and all have already started working from office, but I'm still, working from home, and so I'm sure many of you would be. So because we are stuck at home, because most of the world is still not sure how to go about working from offices, etc., and therefore, obviously, there is a restriction on physical travel and going to the department and making submissions. I think that is the main reason why everything was, pushed aggressively. And I would feel that from the Prime Minister's perspective, it was a blessing in disguise, because he has always been wanting to do this. He has always been wanting to bring in digital transformation. And this was a good excuse to make it a forced change. Therefore, in August, they have now made this e-assessment scheme into faceless assessment scheme. Notifications have been issued. The order under 119 also, it said any assessment order which is not in conformity with faceless assessment scheme shall be treated as non-est and shall be deemed to have never been passed. So this is great, because now there is absolutely no option left for the AOs, or rather for the Income Tax Department, but to complete all the pending assessments as well as all the future assessments that will come up in the years to come through the faceless assessment scheme. So this brings us now to the actual faceless assessment scheme. This is a screenshot that I picked up from somewhere on the internet. It is obviously an official one, and it gives a screenshot. Maybe it is not readable on your screens, but again, all the objectives are clearly brought out. The features are clearly brought out. If you see the last bullet point, which is, I think, very important and telling, 2/3 of the manpower is utilized for faceless assessment and balance for other functions. This is tremendous, because this means that the central team that they have formed, of course, it's not geographically centralized, but it is basically in terms of functions, it is centralized. That the team will be huge, and it will conduct all the assessments, and therefore the number of people who will be left for other functions will be much smaller. So this is something that is interesting. Let us see how it works out. It also gives the map on the left side of the screen, gives you an idea of how many centers are there across the country, the CCIT centers and the other offices, etc. Now on 12th, the central government has come out with a scheme to conduct faceless assessments with effect from 12th September 2020. The scheme has laid out functional structure of the e-assessment centers at the national and the regional levels, and the framework provides for specialized units in the regional e-assessment center for carrying out the specific function related to various aspects of the assessment. So you have the NEAC, that is the National E-Assessment Center. Then you have the REAC, or the Regional E-Assessment Center, and you have the assessment units, verification units, technical units, and finally the review units. In the language of the bigger firms in our country, I would feel that this is primarily a maker-checker concept. That the person who makes will not be the person who checks, and the person who checks has got to be different from the person who makes. This is interesting, this is useful, and this is good news, because this will definitely, I hope and pray, it will improve the quality of the assessments in the country. Some of the important definitions that we need to keep in mind is assessment means assessment of total income or loss of the assessee. Of course, we all know this, but the point is that all the assessment under 143.3 or 144 will now be faceless. Then you have an automated allocation system, which means an algorithm for randomized allocation of cases by using suitable technological tools, including AI and machine learning, with a view to optimize the use of resources. This would be, I think, taking our income tax department to the next level, where they are going to use artificial intelligence to figure out which officer in the NEAC or the REAC, etc., has got lesser burden right now, and therefore allocate this particular case to that person, and all on a random basis. So if there are more than one person who have a lesser burden, the machine will decide, or the software will decide, or the algorithm will decide to whom a particular case should be allotted to. Then mobile app has also been defined to mean the application software of the Income Tax Department developed for mobile devices, which is downloaded and installed on the registered mobile number of the SSC. Again, this is also next level of e-governance. We will shortly have a mobile app that all of us will have to download on our mobile. Our taxpayers will have to download on their respective mobiles, and through the mobile app also, the government would be pushing notification notices, etc., to the taxpayers. Then, in the scheme, even real-time alert has been defined, and it means any communication sent to the SSC by way of SMS on his registered mobile number, or by way of update on his mobile app, or by way of an email at his registered email address, so as to alert him regarding delivery of an electronic communication. And registered account of the SSC is defined to mean electronic filing account registered by the SSC in the designated portal. For the time being, we have the designated portal, that is the e-filing portal. Now, in one of the programs of the BCS where Mr. Kamlesh Varshney was present, he is the Joint Secretary of TPL1 in the Ministry of Finance. I had mentioned this, that today as it is, we have a problem with the e-filing portal. At come 31st July or 30th September or 30th November or 31st March, etc., which are the heavy dates in the normal course. Of course, now the due dates have all changed, but when those, in the past, when we have had these due dates, there has been a huge pressure on the e-filing portal. Invariably, the portal hangs and people are unable to log in and people are unable to file. So if you are putting further burden on the same portal as far as e-assessment is concerned, then it is bound to create even more problems for the taxpayers and the chartered accountants. Because if for any reason the due date for filing any tax return or tax audit or whatever happens to coincide with the due date for completion of assessments, then there will be disaster, because the system is bound to hang up again and again, and then there will be issues of not being able to respond to notices in time, etc. And therefore we have to ensure that the portal doesn't crash. So I had suggested to the Joint Secretary that you may kindly consider alternative portal for the purpose of e-assessment, which is delinked from the e-filing portal, so that there is no further pressure on the already overburdened e-filing portal. Let us see what happened in the past. For the time being, it is the Income Tax India e-filing.gov.in portal where all the action is going to take place. We then come to the registered email address definition. And that is defined to mean the email address at which an electronic communication may be delivered or transmitted to the SSC, including the email address. Now the problem is, the definition says it means the email address so including, and then it says the email address available on the e-filing account of the addressee, the email address available in the last IT return furnished, or the email address available in the permanent account number database relating to the addressee, or in the case of an addressee being an individual who has an Aadhaar card, then the email address of the addressee available in the database of the UID, or in the case of a company, the email address of the company is available on the official website of MCA, or any email address made available by the addressee to the authority or any person authorized by such authority. This is going to be a problem area for many, because often, especially in case of companies, or especially in cases where the chartered accountant changes and a new tax consultant comes into the picture and there is a change of address, I think these are practical issues that all chartered accountants will have to be careful about. We will therefore need to ensure that at all places the same email address is given. Otherwise, it is possible that 1 minute, sorry. it is possible that the email given in the ITR, which was filed in say 2019, has email ID A, and after that the person and that email ID belonged to the accountant of the company, and then the fellow has left in 2020. In 2021, the notice comes on that email ID, and obviously it will not be received. So we need to take care. This is an additional function that I think one housekeeping function that we will all have to do for all our clients, and find out which are the different email IDs registered at different places or given to the department at different places, and try and ensure that going forward for the next few months or at least a year or two, we go on checking all the email IDs. We'll have to tell the clients to check all these email IDs, and particularly the spam folders, because many times now the emails are going into the spam. Find out whether any email has been sent by the department. And as a last resort, obviously, we can log on to the e-filing portal itself and check whether there is any notice that is appearing over there in the e-compliance tab, which has remained unattended. So this is something that we need to be very careful about. The assessment under the scheme shall be made in respect of such territorial area or person, etc. All this is fine. This is not very relevant. But now we come to the departmental structure, how the department is going to be structured in order to cope with the faceless assessment. On 7th October 2019, last year, the Revenue Secretary inaugurated the NEAC in Delhi. It will act as a nodal point through which all the communications between the IT department and the taxpayers will be made going forward. It will be, the one in Delhi will be headed by the PCIT. The major functions of the NEAC is to communicate between IT department and taxpayers, coordinate between different units in the tax department for gathering information, coordination of assessment seeking technical inputs on tax positions, verification and review of the information submitted by taxpayers, and review of draft orders framed by the assessment units. Then the regional e-assessment center will comprise of 4 units: the assessment unit, review unit, technical unit, and verification unit. The review unit will be controlled by the principal chief commissioner of jurisdiction, and the 8 regional e-assessment centers have already been set up in Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Calcutta, Ahmedabad, Pune, Bangalore, and Hyderabad. And each of these will be headed by a CCIT level officer. The assessment unit functions similar to an assessing officer. It has to identify the points or the issues which are material for determining any liability or the refund to payable by or due to the assessee. It has to seek information or clarifications on points or issues which it has identified, and it has to analyze the material furnished by the assessee or any other person, etc. Any other person means the AO may, like how we have in calling for information under 133. So in the assessment of Mr. A, the AO means now the NEAC through the assessment unit may ask for certain information or clarifications or confirmation from third parties, and so the third party will also obviously furnish the material. That will also have to be electronically done, and that will be analyzed by the assessment unit. The verification unit, obviously, as the name suggests, will carry out the function of the verification, and the functions will include inquiry, cross verification, examination of books of account. Now, examination of books of account will park it on the side for the time being, because there is a big question mark as to how books of account will be examined in the context of faceless assessments. But the functions include examination of books of account, examination of witnesses and recording of statements, and any other functions as may be required for the purpose of the verification. This will also include site visits for examining and verifying facts for carrying out assessments. Now, per se, this function goes this function goes against the concept of faceless assessment because it talks about a site visit. So I'm not sure how this will really translate into actual action on the part of the verification unit. But again, as it is an evolving subject, and we will see how it evolves in the months to come. Technical unit will play the role of experts by providing technical assistance. I would feel that this is more like in the large firms, there is a separate team which is called a knowledge management team or the advisory team, etc., which is a central team which does the research and the development and the case laws, etc. They look at the hardcore tax issues and come up with the firm-wide stand to be taken. So in the same way, the technical unit of the assessment, this whole faceless assessment scheme, will probably play that same role. And function will include assistance or advice on legal, accounting, forensic, information technology, valuation, audit, transfer pricing, data analytics, and any other technical matters which could be required for the particular case or class of cases. And this will also include functions of a transfer pricing officer in a transfer pricing case. That brings us to review units, which would perform the function of review of the draft assessment order. So this, like maker checker concept that I mentioned. So the maker, that is the assessment unit, will create the order, and the review unit will check the order. And their function includes checking whether the relevant and material evidence has been brought on record, checking whether the relevant points of fact and law have been duly incorporated in the draft order, whether the issues on which addition or disallowance that should be made have been discussed in the order, whether the applicable judicial decisions have been considered and dealt with, and for the arithmetical accuracy of the modification proposed, if any, and any other function as may be required for the purpose of review. So this would also probably serve like the presently, or rather in the past, once an assessment was completed, the order and the whole file used to go to their audit department. And the audit department checked for all these things which are mentioned as functions of the review unit. So this would be a kind of a internal audit department of the faceless assessment scheme. Then there is a whole lot of action taken on by the CBDT in terms of designating who will be the PCIT and CCIT and who will form part of the NEAC and the REAC, etc. Every few days we get these orders which talk about the posting of various principal CITs or the CCITs, etc. in the various REACs or the NEAC. So the assessment units, verification units, technical units, and review units will have additional commissioner or additional director or joint commissioner or joint director, then DC, DD or AC or ADI or ITO as the case may be, and any other authority. Basically the structure obviously remains similar to the one that we have been accustomed to all these years. This brings us to the digital transformation, which the Prime Minister is so passionate about. All notices or records or any other communication will be delivered to the SSC by electronic means, that is by placing it on the e-proceeding tab on the e-filing portal, or by sending it to the email ID of the SSC, or by uploading on the SSC mobile app, and also sending real-time alert. Notice or any communication made to any person other than the SSC will be sent to that person's registered email ID, and it also provides that any delivery would also have to be followed by a real-time alert to the addressee. This last item, I think, takes care of a question which has been raised by a lot of people, that will, or rather, some people have complained that emails are not coming, and straight away, the notices are being kept or placed directly on the e-filing portal, and no communication is sent to the taxpayer. I personally believe that very hard to believe that emails are not coming because this is all system driven. The problem, according to me, would be about the email ID at which the communication is sent, and also the fact that many of the emails are getting into the spam folders. So one will have to take greater care, as I said earlier also, about this particular issue. But the fortunate thing is that they are supposed to be sending these notices or communications using as many IDs as they have, So not only on the email, but also on the mobile app and also as by way of SMS. So therefore, it would be very difficult for a taxpayer to prove now that he has not got it, because the department will find it very easy to prove that they have sent it, because they will have an electronic receipt in their possession to show that the necessary communication was sent. So this puts a huge burden on us chartered accountants, because we'll have to guide our tax-paying clients to be very careful about the receipt of these notices. The date and time of service of notice. This is very important and crucial, because as we all know, everything is time bound and within, so filing of appeal has to be done within 30 days of the date of receipt of the order, etc., etc. So in the context of digital service of notice or records, what is the date and time of service of notice? So it's clear that will be determined in accordance with the provisions of Section 13 of the Information Technology Act 2000. Which, and I've reproduced the section of the IT Act in the subsequent slides, but basically the time of receipt of an electronic record shall be if the addressee has designated a computer resource for the purpose of receiving electronic records, then the time when the electronic record enters the designated computer resource. Otherwise, the time when the electronic record is retrieved by the addressee. So I would say in 99.9% of all the cases, it would be the moment the electronic notice or record enters the designated computer resource of the taxpayer. That would be the time and the date of receipt of that particular notice or record. And let us see what the Section 13 of the Information Technology Act talks about. It says that the dispatch of an electronic record occurs, means the dispatch is said to be completed, when it enters the computer resource outside the control of the originator, meaning in this case the income tax department. And the important thing is that, save as otherwise agreed between the originator and the addressee, the time of receipt of an electronic record will be determined as follows. And what is important is, if the addressee has designated a computer resource for the purpose of receiving electronic record, then the receipt occurs at the time when the electronic record enters the designated computer resource. Now, in the context of income tax, every taxpayer obviously has got a designated computer resource, because otherwise you can't do any e-filing. So you have given an email ID or you have given a mobile number. The moment you have put that becomes your computer resource. And if that computer resource is available with the department, which obviously it is, then the deal between the taxpayer and the department is done. The taxpayer has said, this particular email ID is my computer resource. The department has accepted that. And once the department sends an email or sends a notice or a communication by way of email to that email ID, the time when the email lands in the inbox of that email ID, that would be the time of receipt of the notice or the email, as the case may be. So in the context of the income tax department, in the context of faceless assessments, I think there is now no ambiguity. There will be therefore no hanky-panky possible. There is no backdating possible. Everything is very clear as to when the notice was issued and when the notice was served. In the context of dispatch, save as otherwise agreed to, so that this is continuation of section 13 of the IT Act, that save as otherwise agreed to between originator and the addressee, an electronic record is deemed to be dispatched at the place where the originator has his place of business and is deemed to be received at the place where the addressee has his place of business. So, nobody can take a technical sort of excuse or technical ground in the appeal that the notice was not received by me at my place of business, so it is not any invalid notice, etc. Because the computer resource is deemed to be the place of business. And so when you give an email ID in the e-filing portal or the income tax return or by any other mode to the department, you are yourself making a commitment under the Information Technology Act that this is my place of business. And once that commitment is given, you then cannot take a stand that this ID is not my place of business or that kind of thing. So these are important issues that we also need to educate our clients about, that whatever was happening in the past is now past and the future is a very different and new future. The SSE, in response to notice or any other communication received from the NESE, has to file a response only through the e-proceeding tab on the e-filing portal. Any other person can respond to the NESE using his registered email ID. So where, for example, information is sought under 133 from a third party, then that other party can send an email to the NESE on the email ID from which he or she has got the email asking for that information. All communication amongst the assessment unit, review unit, verification unit or technical unit or with the SSE or any other person with respect to the information or documents or evidence or any other details as may be necessary for the purpose of making an assessment under the scheme shall be through the National E-Assessment Center. Now, the actual what cases are covered, etc. Broadly speaking, where the return is filed under 139, 142.1, 148.1 and notice is issued under 143.2, or where the return is not filed in response to a notice issued under 142.1 or return is not filed under 148.1 and a notice issued under 142.1, then the NESE has the power, and according to me, not only the power, but it is mandatory for the NESE to intimate to the SSE that the assessment in his case, if it is selected for scrutiny, will be completed under this scheme. So this is a formality that the NESE has to carry out. The NESE will serve a notice on the SSE under 143.2 specifying the issues for selection of the case for assessment, and the SSE has to reply to this within 15 days of the date of receipt. This is going to be an issue and we'll come to that issue later on, but in terms of theory, this is the way it will proceed, where the SSE so these are the cases where this kind of notices can come. And the CBDT has again issued a notification number 61. I mentioned this earlier, which talks about the various sections which will be now covered under the faceless assessment scheme. So, issue of notice under 143.2, allocation of case to any assessment unit under the REAC. The initial interaction between NESE and assessment unit will be with respect to information, documents or explanation from the SSE or any other person, certain inquiry or verification, technical assistance, issue notice or requisition to SSE or any other person, assign request to verification unit through automated allocation system, or assign request to any technical unit through the automated allocation system. The AAS is also a new acronym that we will all have to now be familiar with, because it is going to become a part of our day-to-day parlance. If the SSE fails to provide the details, then the NESE will issue a show cause notice under 144 for a best judgment assessment. SSE has to respond within the time specified or ask for more time. If the SSE fails to submit, then again NESE will intimate to the assessment unit that there is a failure on the part of the taxpayer. The assessment unit will take all evidences to prepare and send the draft order to the NESE. It will also provide the details of penalty proceedings to be initiated. And NESE on receipt of the order will then proceed like this. If no modification is required in ITR, the final assessment order will be issued along with show cause notice for penalty. Here I am not very clear that if there is no modification required, why should there be a penalty? But anyway, if there is a modification required, then they will have to provide an opportunity by issuing a show cause notice to the SSE. The NESE will assign to review unit through AAS to either concur or agree with the draft order or suggest modification. The review unit will review it and give their suggestion, and then again the procedure 1 or 2 will be followed. Upon receipt of the suggestion, it will be forwarded again back to the assessment unit, and again assessment unit will have to follow the procedure 1 or 2. The SSE, when SSE gets a show cause notice, SSE has to submit the documents or request extension of time, and upon receipt of the details, the same will be forwarded by the NESE to the assessment unit, and on receipt of draft order, procedure 1 or 2 will again be followed. The circle will go on till finally the final assessment order is issued along with the show cause notice for penalty if required. This particular image was received by me by email from itatorders.org, which is shares a lot of ITAT orders, and it is an excellent snapshot of how the whole procedure for faceless assessment will work. That is why I have reproduced it here, but I'm giving credit to the itatorders.org for this particular image. The NESE will intimate the SSE that assessment in this case will be completed under the scheme on those 3 criteria. It will issue the notice under 143(2) to the SSE. SSE will submit response in 15 days to the NESE. NESE will assign the case randomly to the assessment unit. Assessment unit will ask the will contact the SSE for to obtain the information, or will write to verification unit to verify the information in any regional faceless assessment, and it will write to technical unit for technical inputs in any regional assessment center. Then it will go again to the NESE. The NESE shall send reply or report received from SSE verification to the assessing. So NESE will again send that whatever inputs it has got, it will again share with the assessment unit. And on the basis of information and inputs, the AU, that is assessment unit, will prepare the draft order, including details of penalty proceedings, and send to NESE. NESE will, so this whole, basically whatever I mentioned earlier is captured very beautifully in this particular image, and this clearly tells us how the whole procedure for faceless assessment will work. Once the faceless assessment is completed, the post-assessment procedures begin. Jainam, how are we on the time?
No, we are going fine.
6:05.
Amit sir,
Okay.
we are going fine.
Okay, I'll just.
break, Amit?
Yeah, I'll just take a water, drink water.
Yeah. Water break. ले लो.
Yeah.
Parcel has reached.
Yeah, okay. I would have preferred the Mitibai College venue, to this sitting at home and talking.
You all are missing that.
Sir, we all miss that.
Yeah. Anyway, so after the assessment is completed, the NESC will transfer all the electronic records of the case to the AO having jurisdiction over the case for imposition of penalty, collection and recovery of demand, rectification of mistakes, giving effect to appellate orders, submission of remand report, etc., etc., proposal seeking sanction for launch of prosecution and filing of complaint before the court, etc. And under exceptional situations, the NESC may, at any stage of assessment, if considered necessary, transfer the case to the AO having jurisdiction over such case after obtaining approval of the board. So the CBDT comes into the picture. So this clearly shows the clear intent of the government that most cases have got to be completed by way of faceless assessment by the NESC through the various units, and in very rare cases only will the matter go back to the jurisdictional AO for conducting a routine, a normal assessment procedure. The imposition of penalty and more importantly the collection and recovery of demand. This is the responsibility of the jurisdictional officer. Now, there have been a lot of questions raised about, whether the one of the objectives of bringing in faceless assessment was the remark in the TARC, which I had reproduced right at the beginning, that the whole everything is governed by the system that the performance of the officers depend on the collection and the targets, etc. Now, a categorical statement was made by the Joint Secretary TPL in one of the discussions that as far as the assessment unit is concerned, meaning the whole NESC, REAC, etc., their performance is not dependent on they are not given any targets for raising demands, etc., for any revenue collection. The targets, if any, of course, this was not mentioned by him, but I'm putting the words into his mouth. The targets, if any, will be given to the jurisdictional officers, which is what is being done presently also. But the point to be noted is that the people who are in charge of the assessments of completing, who are in charge of the actual completion of assessments, they do not have the targets of revenue collection, and therefore that is a huge change, I would say, as compared to the past, because the officer who has on his against his head a gun that you have a target to achieve in terms of revenue collection. If the same guy is doing the assessment, he is bound to be prejudiced, and he is bound to pass orders which somehow help him in achieving his target. That is not going to be the case now. So hopefully we will see much better assessment orders, and hopefully we will see orders where high-pitched assessments are fewer. I don't know whether they will completely not be there, but hopefully at least there will be fewer high-pitched assessments. So these are the rights or the duties of the jurisdictional officer once the case papers are transferred back by the NESC to the concerned jurisdictional officer. The authentication of electronic records. An electronic record shall be authenticated by the taxpayer or IT department by affixing his digital signature. In case of SSC, authentication can also be done through verification on the electronic verification code, EVC. I think as we go more and more in the future, in the context of digital transformation, getting a digital signature will become common for almost everyone now. Up till now, we have had only DSCs for larger taxpayers where tax audits were there, or companies, etc. But probably going forward, I think even individual taxpayers, we will also have to suggest to them to have a DSC, because to that extent it makes life far simpler in terms of authentication of documents. This brings us to personal hearings. So as mentioned earlier, generally no personal hearings will be required between the SSC and the IT department. However, in the following cases, the SSC either himself or through his AR will be entitled for a hearing which will be conducted exclusively through video conferencing. So there is a door kept open for a personal hearing, but the definition of personal hearing is a hearing conducted through video conferencing. So there is no, actually it is not a personal hearing, it is only a electronic hearing. But nevertheless, because there will be a electronic hearing, obviously the identity of the taxpayer stroke his authorized representative cannot be hidden. And in which context or which situations would personal hearing through video conferencing be allowed? That where a modification is proposed in the draft assessment order, the SSC or his AR in response to a show cause notice can request a personal hearing by obtaining approval from CCIT or the DG in charge of the regional e-assessment center. And where a statement of the SSC has to be recorded, in the case of examination or recording of the statement of the SSC or any other person, other than statement in the course of survey, then the department has to conduct a video conferencing hearing. The board will establish suitable facilities for video conferencing, including telecommunication application software, which supports video telephony. This, I think, is definitely again a part of the next level of e-governance, where our income tax department will be conducting hearings through video conferencing. Of course, we have already had a glimpse of it through the tribunal hearings in the last few months, but this would now be across the country, even as far as assessments are concerned. Hopefully, we should never have this particular aspect to be dealt with for our clients. But theoretically, income tax penalties, the way it will be handled would be that the faceless assessment scheme also provides for levy of penalty for non-compliance of any notice, direction, and order issued under the scheme. The penalty order has to be passed after providing adequate opportunity of being heard and will be passed by the NEAC. Any unit may, in the course of the proceedings, for non-compliance of any notice or non-compliance of direction or order issued under the scheme on the part of the SSC or any other person, so the unit can recommend to the NEAC to initiate any penalty proceedings under Chapter 21 of the IT Act against the taxpayer or the SSC or against any other person, as the case may be. The procedure would be the assessment unit has to recommend the penalty proceedings to the NEAC. NEAC has to issue show cause notice to the taxpayer. Taxpayer has to reply to the NEAC. The NEAC will give a copy of that response which the taxpayer has filed to the show cause notice. That copy will be given to the assessment unit and also the other units, and they in turn will provide their response back to the NEAC. And if the penalty has to be levied, then the draft penalty order has to be conveyed to the NEAC, which in turn will send a show cause notice again to the taxpayer that this is the draft penalty order. The taxpayer can give again a response back to the NEAC. And finally, once the penalty order is finalized, that final penalty order along with the demand notice will be served on the taxpayer by the NEAC. Appellate proceedings, the e-assessment scheme has clarified regarding the filing of appeal under 246A of the Act against e-assessment orders will be filed with the CIT. This we have already had in the past. We are filing the appeals to CIT appeal electronically. And the section has been amended to say that appeal against an assessment made by the NEAC under the scheme shall lie before CI Commissioner Appeals having jurisdiction over the jurisdictional AO, and any reference to the Commissioner Appeals in any communication from the NEAC shall mean such jurisdictional commissioner appeals. This, I think, also answers a question that many people have had in the past, that where will the jurisdiction lie for the appeal, etc. What about the judicial precedents? If the assessment of a Mumbai-based taxpayer is completed by someone in any other city, which case laws will be mandatorily applicable, etc. So I think it's very clear with the help of this particular slide that ultimately it is all the jurisdictional precedents that will take charge, and not the city in which this assessment unit is located is not relevant. This brings us to the issues in the faceless assessment scheme, which I have come across in the last few days, and I'm sure this is where we are all interested in the questions and the possible answers to them. First issue is about the concurrent jurisdiction. A lot of people have doubts. I already talked about this, that ultimately the jurisdiction of the assessing officer does not change. Whoever is my officer, as per the jurisdiction to which I belong, that officer continues to have the charge of my file. He or that officer continues to be responsible for the recovery of demand raised against me, or for issuing refund to me, etc., or for passing or giving effect to the appellate orders, etc., etc. So there is no concurrent jurisdiction. It is only that the function of passing an order has been given to some other team which works as part of the income tax department, which does the activity of passing an order, and thereafter everything else that has to take place will be done by the jurisdictional officer. So to my mind, there is no confusion about the concurrent jurisdiction, but when we come to Q&A, if there is any other thought on this, we may discuss it. Then lack of clarity on whether assessment unit has to mandatorily follow suggestions given by the review unit. I think again this will evolve over the years. I don't have an answer to this, whether the assessment unit has to mandatorily follow the suggestions given by the review unit. But probably when we have the meeting on Wednesday with the CBDT, we may get clarity on this. Then where the issues are not specific and general in nature under 143(2), whether basis of raising the assessment will be specified to the SSE. According to me, the scheme is very clear that the NESE has to intimate to the SSE why the case is picked up for scrutiny, and therefore, to my mind, there is no confusion. The notice that comes from the NESE will have to specify that, and even if it does not, the SSE can definitely seek an explanation from the NESE on this front. In the case of penalty, whether recording of satisfaction and issue of show cause notice for levy of penalty will be carried out by the same unit. So we have to, I think, forget the past and have a change in mindset. We have got accustomed to a particular way of functioning as far as the department is concerned, but the department has changed now, and we will also have to change our the way we look at the department. We have to forget about the unit and forget about the who's doing what, etc. I think these are all technical issues that we should really not be concerned with. Personally, I believe that a lot of issues which many people are raising are over technical in nature, and what I would look at is that what is the intent of the government. The intent of the government is very clear, that going forward no assessment will be conducted physically, everything will be faceless. That being the case, let us try and accept the fact that whatever is the shortcoming in the law as it stands today, whatever is required to be done in order to ensure that the intention of the government is translated into the law, the government will do it. The problem is that in the last few months, there has been so much of stress everywhere, both at the government level as well as at the common man level, that there are too many things to be done, and it is obviously therefore possible that whenever they issue any amendments or whenever they issue any circular notification, etc., a lot of things may be left out because they are also working under pressure from their homes and on multiple things. And it is possible that there would be certain lacuna in the changes that are brought out. But the moment we have brought to their notice that this is a problem, they have come out with the solution. So, to the extent possible, the bureaucrats have been very proactive, and this is my personal experience speaking, because I have been in touch with them in the last 5 months. And in fact, just yesterday also, I had asked a question to one of the members in the finance ministry as to when the amendment bill is going to be passed. And his answer, which actually I should have known, is that it all depends on when the parliament functions and takes up the matter before the parliament. So the only point I'm trying to make is that the bureaucrats are proactive, they are receptive, and therefore let us not try to be hyper technical. Let us look at the intention and then presume that that intention will be translated into the law by way of suitable amendments. If those amendments have not already been done, then those amendments will definitely be carried out in the days or months or weeks to come. As far as penalty, whether recording of satisfaction and issue of show cause notice for levy of penalty will be carried out by the same unit, according to me, that's a matter of detail that the government will have to figure out. I would feel that for the time being or for the near future, the matter will probably go back to the same unit which passed the assessment order, because they would be aware of the facts of that case, and therefore, to my mind, it will go back to the same unit. But there could be a different view possible. But ultimately, what will actually happen will depend on what the department or what the CBDT decides. What about DRP? Whether those proceedings will be faceless or not? Again, that's a very valid question. Informally, I had learned through one discussion on one forum that it will not be covered, but we will wait for a formal answer to that question from the government. The issues that we are obviously going to face in the days to come is about the problem of the size of the files that we can upload. We have already faced that problem in the past. The other problem is on the restriction on the number of attachments that can be uploaded, and on how to give file names to the attachments. Okay, these are issues which sort of cast one more responsibility on us chartered accountants, that not only should we be good at drafting the reply to the notice that is received, but some of us or some staff members in our team will also have to be experts in technology. So they will have to be experts in creating PDF documents. In my office, for example, while responding to e-assessment notices, we have had the issue of having to combine 2-3 different documents into one common PDF document, primarily because only X number of documents can be attached to one particular submission. So while we may have wanted to submit 50 documents, we have had to combine those 50 into, say, 10 documents. So that merging of documents using Adobe and converting them into one PDF document, this is again a new art that we will have to learn. And this is a sign of the way our practice is going to change. And we cannot take a stand that at the age of 60 or 65, where I'm going to sit and learn all this. There is no option. There is no age. This has nothing to do with age. This has clearly to do with whether you want to practice or you don't want to practice. If you want to practice, if you want to represent your client before the assessing officer, you have to learn all this, or at least have someone in your staff who is able to figure it out, So, size of the file, how to compress the files, how to combine the document into fewer number of documents so that the number of attachments are lesser, etc. How to give names to the files, etc. Those are issues that we will have to now be conversant with. To which email ID will the notice be sent? That is something that I've already spoken about. I will not repeat that. How will the identity of the taxpayer be hidden from the assessment cell? Now, this is an important one because the whole intent of the government is to reduce corruption. Corruption can be reduced if the taxpayer and the tax officer are not in touch with each other. They will not be in touch with each other if they don't know who each other are. From a AO perspective, it is clear that it is hidden. We don't know who's the officer. But from the taxpayer perspective, we still don't know how the identity of the taxpayer is going to be masked. In the e-assessment that happened last year, clearly there was no masking. The AO knew who is the officer, who is the taxpayer, and the taxpayer knew who the officer was. Now we will not know who is the officer, but whether the officer knows or does not know who is the taxpayer is a question that remains unanswered. We don't know how they are going to do the masking. Let us see how they will figure it out. Yeah, books of accounts. How will the taxpayer satisfy the requirement of production of books of accounts maintained wherever he is asked to? And this was, I had mentioned this in one of the earlier slides also, that verification of books of accounts has also to be done by the particular unit. How do you, in the physical world, we have seen, big thappas of chopadas being carried, tied up in red cloth and climbing the stairs of Aikar Bhavan and taking it to the officer's cabin and opening them and showing it to him. In the context of e-assessment and faceless assessment, how do you do that? I think again here we will have to wait and watch as to how the department will handle this particular matter. Personally, I feel that those days are gone where the department will try to verify the books of accounts, because their whole focus, their whole attention has moved away from the routine way of conducting assessment to a artificial intelligence driven and data analytics driven assessment. They have got very specific points that they want to check in that assessment of the particular taxpayer. They have got pointed information through, whether it is through 26 AS or through whatever, through the 360-degree profiling or whatever it is. So they've got very pointed questions. They've got very pointed items to be checked. And therefore, the number of cases where books of accounts will require to be verified will be very limited. And the assessments will now focus on very specific issues instead of the long types of questionnaires that were given in the past, 3-4 pages and 30-40 questions. Personally, I feel that those days are over and we will not hopefully have those kinds of questionnaires. If that is correct, if that personal view of mine turns out to be correct and true, then I think the question of production of books of accounts will not arise. But if at all, if that question does arise, then I would not know how we will be able to produce. Probably what will happen is that we will have to extract the entire ledger or groups of ledgers, etc., from the accounting software and get them authenticated by the taxpayer through a digital signature, then upload them onto the e-filing portal. That is easier said than done, because again the problem of size will come, etc. But I think it is the onus is on the government to figure out what to do, and we should not really worry about this. Let them come out with the question of giving or producing the books of account, and at that time I am sure that if at all they raise this question or requirement of production of books of account, obviously they will have a solution also in hand, as otherwise they will not be able to verify the books. In case of a personal hearing, which I mentioned earlier will be through video conferencing, whether the recording of the discussion will be forwarded to the assessment unit to avoid any spillage of information in the process is one question. Before that, the question will be whether it will at all be recorded and made available to the SSE as well. Today we are having a Zoom meeting. The Zoom meeting can be recorded and can be subsequently shared with anybody else. Any other format of video conferencing which is typically used nowadays, whether it is WebEx or GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar, etc., or even Microsoft Teams, etc., all these have got a facility of recording. The question is whether in the context of e-assessment, whether as and when a video conference is held, whether the SSE will have a possibility of recording it at his end, and whether the assessment unit will have a facility of recording it at their end. We will have to wait and watch. We'll cross the bridge when we come to it. For the time being, these are unanswered or open questions. What are the circumstances under which personal hearing will be granted through video conferencing facility? And if at all there is a video conferencing facility, how will the identity of the assessing officer, the secrecy, how will the secrecy be maintained at both ends? These are questions to which presently there are no answers. Then, in case of any disagreement on the valuation of property between taxpayer and the NESE, what would be the procedure with regard to the reference to the valuation officer? This is a question that has been raised again and again. I would feel that the act, the sections dealing with reference to valuation officer have not undergone any change. So if at all there is a need to refer a matter to the valuation officer, that section will have to be followed, and it would be the NESE that would have to follow that particular procedure, because the whole assessment procedure is now to be completed only by the NESE through the RESEs, and therefore the reference to the valuation officer, in my view, will have to be made by the e-assessment cell itself and not by the jurisdictional AO. And whatever steps have been laid down in the section dealing with reference to the valuation officer, including giving an opportunity to the SSE, etc., everything will have to be followed by the NESE. So I don't see any issues on that front. One interesting question that was raised to me is that earlier we could raise or make additional claim during assessment proceedings by writing to the AO and raising a claim. How would that work in the context of faceless assessments? To my mind, I don't think anything has changed. That is a right that the taxpayer has got, and that right cannot be taken away merely because the method of conducting the assessment has undergone a change. So the right remains. The question is only how to exercise that right. I would feel that during the course of assessment, if any claim is to be made, earlier we were making it by way of a submission to the assessing officer through a formal letter, and the same will continue in faceless assessment also. We will have to make a claim to the NESE through the email ID that is provided, and I don't know why the NESE would reject this, or rather not reject, but why they would not consider it. Whether they admit it or not admit it is a matter. It is a matter of fact, but they will have to consider it while completing the assessment proceedings. The next issue is whether that 15-day period given to the SSE to respond, is it fair? Is it as per law? To my mind, it is not as per law. The Income Tax Act does not have any provision for limiting the time given. The Act talks about reasonable time to be given to the SSE to respond. In the past also, in many cases where unreasonable stands were taken by the AO and time was not given to the SSE, the assessment have been struck to be invalid. and I'm sure that the same will continue in this case also. If we feel that 15 days is inadequate, I'm sure that we have the right to ask for extension of time. And if that extension is not granted, then I would feel that that is an unreasonable demand. At the same time, if there is a repeated failure on the part of the SSC to respond to the notices, and then you take a stand that not adequate or inadequate time was given to me, then I think the appellate authorities will hold it against you. But where the SSC has immediately responded to the notice and has said that 15 days are inadequate if there are genuine reasons for asking for more time, I think because this is all evolving, because the government clearly wants this whole thing to succeed, and because the government is now very wary of negative publicity in the press, in the social media when things go wrong, I am confident that they will give more time to the SSC to respond. I had mentioned earlier that there is an annexure or appendix giving all the relevant notifications. In particular, notification number 60 and 61 are very important. 13th August 2020, both the notifications are issued on the same date. These are important and I think should be kept handy by all of us where if we have got any scrutinies coming up. Is it a paradigm shift? Will the faceless assessment scheme bring in a paradigm shift in the tax administration of the country? For this, we need to look at what have we been subject to in the past. We have in the past have had to deal with corruption, deal with roving inquiries, deal with lengthy questionnaires, deal with manipulation of dates, both by the authorized representatives in some cases, as well as the officers or the staff of the officer, backdating of orders, backdating of submission, replacement of some parts of the submissions. I think before calling anybody corrupt, we must also look at ourselves in the mirror and see whether our profession has played any role in the tarnishing of the whole system. We are all aware that this has been happening in the past. Apart from that, we have wasted hours and hours in traveling to the Aikar Bhavans and then hours and hours waiting over there for the officer to call us inside. This is the past. In the context of this, in the background of all this past experience, will there be a paradigm shift brought about by the faceless assessment? I would feel the answer is definitely yes. With no physical interaction, corruption will definitely take a hit. Because everything is system driven, all the malpractices of backdating, etc., will disappear. Because there is a central team and because the entire scheme would be under a floodlight and have the attention of the PMO and the FM, it is definitely possible that the roving inquiries and lengthy questionnaires will stop. And obviously, because of faceless assessment and the electronic assessment, there will be considerable saving of time. So to me, the answer is very clear that there is going to be a paradigm shift from baseless assessments to faceless assessments. But this is a transitional period. Like every other initiative of the government where there was a change brought in, this particular initiative will also have many teething problems. We'll have to bear with them and support the government to ensure that this succeeds. Removal of corruption is in the interest of all Indians, and therefore we chartered accountants need to come together, unite, and jointly brace ourselves for a very tough time ahead, which tough time in my mind or to my mind is only temporary, and till the whole thing settles down, we will have to bear with this. All of us are there over here to convey our problems to the government. At the BCS level, I'm available till my term as chairman of the taxation committee ends in next July, and I'm sure the subsequently also the next chairman will take it up. But we are here to help. The institute is also obviously there to convey our problems to the government. And fortunately, after a long time in history, there is a government and bureaucrats and a set of bureaucrats who are listening and who are proactive and who are receptive to criticism and who are willing to bring about changes. On this positive note, I end whatever I had to say, and we can now have question and answers. Questions can be from anyone. Answers will hopefully be from Gautam. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit Bhai. There are few questions which participants have posted in the Q&A tab.
Ah.
So I'll just read it out for you.
You don't need to bother. Who's that name? Who's speaking?
Okay.
Sorry.
Janam.
Janam. I'm reading it. In case, so first is, I don't know which order. 555. Krishna Kumar Parik. In case notice goes to spam, what is the remedy for same, as many a time people don't check spam folder? The remedy, I'll tell you what I'm doing. I can't preach. I'm not preaching. I'm not trying to give sermon. But sir, I am checking my spam folder of every email ID every half an hour or 1 hour. I have no option, because forget income tax notices. Even normal office emails are also going into spam now, you know. BCA's emails go to spam. Institute's emails are going to spam. So there is no option left, but for me, there is no option left for me but to check my spam folder of every email. I've got a Hotmail ID, a Gmail, 2-3 Gmail IDs. I've got my office ID. I've got a BCA's Gmail ID. I've got multiple IDs. I am an independent director, so I've got that particular email ID. Everywhere I am checking the spam folder, because with the multiplicity of emails that are sent out every day on millions of numbers of bases, it is bound to be a case where important emails go into spam. And so I think we have to change our mindset and ensure that we check our spam folder on a daily basis, if not, unlike me, on a hourly basis. Then Mr. Kiran Pancholi has said, my client had applied for group gratuity scheme to close, for which LIC needs NOC from income tax, but no one is replying. Change of jurisdiction from Delhi to Mumbai, but no reply or action from income tax. Form 13 for lower deduction filed by NRA client, but no reply or action from traces. How these issues will be in the faceless assessment schemes? So first, coming to Form 13 for lower deduction, I think Form 13 basically under Section 197, all the applications which have been made over the years, this has been a perennial problem of getting a response. They are supposed to dispose of within a particular period of time, but it never happens. They keep on asking for all kinds of information, and finally when they give the NOC, the certificate, it is not for nil, but it is for some slightly lower than the standard rate of TDS prescribed in the Act. So this is a problem which has nothing to do with faceless assessments. It is a perennial problem that the department has to figure out. We have been complaining to the government on this front, and if the problem that you are facing is in the present context of COVID, then we have to bear with it, because everyone is affected by it. But if it is a non-COVID related problem, then I think through organizations like the Institute or the BCAS or Chamber, etc., we will have to bring it to the notice of the department. As far as change of jurisdiction from Delhi to Mumbai is concerned, again, that has nothing to do with faceless assessment, because faceless assessment is anyways going to be conducted by the NEAC and REAC. The question is only that, so according to me, because of the faceless assessment scheme, I think these problems of jurisdiction will get sorted out very quickly, because ultimately NEAC will have to give it to a particular officer. So they will have to internally figure, this is all internal problem and nothing to do with the taxpayer. They will have to figure it out. They will have to resolve it quickly, because otherwise, to whom will the NEAC give back the case papers after completion of assessment? If they are not having the answer to this, then it's a happy situation for the taxpayer, because he will not be pressed by anyone for the recovery of the demand. So that situation obviously will never arise. Once the order is passed, this whole jurisdictional issue will be sorted out by the department themselves. So we need not worry about that. Of course, if your past things are held up, if your past order giving effect is held up, or something else, any past matters are held up because of the change in jurisdiction from one place to another, and you are feeling helpless, then that has to be sorted out. I think uh, at a larger, if there are large number of such cases, we can make a representation. If there is only one or two stray cases, then we have to take it up at a personal level with people known in the department. And maybe I will try to find out if who is in charge of this, whether it is the DIT systems in Delhi, or whether it is the CPC, etc. And I will inform Gautam Shah, and then maybe you can connect with him and try and find out. But for the time being, this is the only thing that I can help you with. As far as group gratuity scheme to close, for which LIC needs NOC from income tax, but no one is replying. Again, this is similar to the problem of COVID, where and the nil or low withholding tax certificate. Perennial problem. They never give any reply. Once the things reopen, once the office is reopened, I think we will have to, go back to the jurisdictional officer, sit on his head and get it done, or very clearly complain to the Prime Minister, the PG portal, saying that this is not being taken care of. The PG portal is important for giving complaints. It has shown results in many cases because it is monitored by the PMO's office, and therefore you may look at the alternative of complaining on the PG portal. Ashok Pradhan has asked, identity of the client can be known through tax challans produced for proving tax payments or even through email IDs. So faceless assessment will not mean unknown SSEs. Can we hide the client identity during the faceless assessment? Yeah, I already mentioned this, that there's no clarity as to how the identity of the taxpayer will be masked, that the department has to figure out. Whether how the identity will be masked. You are right. The challan, everything has the name. Even for example, if they ask, say for example, they ask for copies of the fixed asset additions. Obviously, the name of the taxpayer is going to be there on the purchase invoices of the fixed assets. So if they want third party confirmation, how will they ask for third party confirmation unless they tell the third party the name of the taxpayer? So those are issues that the department will have to figure out. The intention is to have a faceless assessment where identities on both sides are masked. Let us wait and see how that intention is really translated into action. In case of additional submission or raising new point by the SSE, I think as rightly pointed out by you, we, that is SSEs, have to do in regular course of assessment, but also file letters with our jurisdictional officer. No, I don't think that is a better course. The jurisdictional officer is out of the picture as far as completion of assessment is concerned. He has nothing to do with it. He may not even accept it. Of course, you may send it by registered AD or by courier, etc., but it is meaningless according to me, because the power of completion of assessment has been taken away from the jurisdictional AO, and therefore there is no point in writing to the jurisdictional AO. This is my view, personal view. Can you scroll up, Janam?
Sir, you will have.
Sorry. I missed. In case of last question, in case of technical issues during faceless assessment, who should be approached? Does it have? I mean, I'm not sure about what you mean by technical issues. Can the question, Shailesh Kothari, ESCO, can you, if the same.
I'll just unmute him, Mr. Shailesh.
Yeah.
Mr. Shailesh Kothari, you can ask your question.
Say in case if I am not able to reply due to say file restriction, file size restriction, or if I am sending the file but the information that I get is that they are not able to open the file, or say for an organization, if there is a policy that any data that we send to an external ID, it has to be a password protected. So this kind of a technical issues, if we have to approach someone or ask anyone, how is there any special email ID where we can approach them for any assistant, or a telephone number where we can speak and explain what issues or what problem we have?
There is one Mehul Dhruv online who would like to answer this question live. I would be happy if someone else also gives a view. So maybe the host can allow Mehul Dhruv to speak.
Amit bhai, Mehul Dhruv is
The co-convener.
co-convener, and
Oh.
it comes by default in Zoom.
अरे अच्छा यार मने एम के एक one question Okay, so Shailesh bhai, my personal view is that even in the context of e-filing, e-filing we often have many problems. So they have given an email ID on the CPC, on the e-filing website, the helpline email ID. And personally, I can tell you that I have got direct contact with CPC, and I often send my problem directly on a personal level to them. And I have also been told that for some matters, please write directly to this particular helpline email ID. And we have written to that helpline email ID, and we have got response from them. So in the same way, I would feel that in the context of faceless assessment as well, they will have to give a helpline email ID on the portal, to which we can write mentioning our technical problems. So I'm talking about technical problems for writing in the context of e-filing. For technical problem, they have told me to write to that helpline email ID, and which is what we have done. In the same way, for faceless assessment as well, they will provide probably a email ID where we can mention all these issues. But as far as password protection is concerned, I'm not very sure. I mean, your organization may have whatever rules, but in the context of responding to notices, you can't take any shelter under those rules and say, I'm not able to give you unprotected files. I'm not really sure, but it's an interesting thing which nobody else has pointed out to me earlier. I will note it down, and we will definitely keep it on our question list when we talk to the CBDT member in the next week.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Amit, I think we are done with the questions that participants had asked.
Hmm.
So now I think I'll give a present task of vote of thanks to Amit bhai.
Janam, 1 minute. Janam,
Yes, Mehul bhai.
there are 3-4 hands raised. Can we just unmute and
Okay. Sure, sir. Mr. Bharat Parekh. Hello, Mr. Bharat Parekh. Can you just ask your question?
We need to unmute him.
Mehul bhai, you'll have to do it because I'm not the co-host right now.
1 minute, I'll try. Oh, it's not happening. I don't know.
Oh, he himself has unmuted. You have to ask him to unmute himself.
Yeah.
It is saying ask to unmute. He is
Okay.
unmuted. Yeah, he's unmuted now.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Parekh. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, please ask a question, sir.
No question from my side.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Bharat bhai.
It's Jyoti Shah. Okay.
Mehul bhai, you need to ask them to unmute. Yeah.
I think Janam, you can take the questions later on from them. and we can give it to Amit.
Sure, Gautam.
Yeah, please
Sure.
go ahead with the vote of thanks. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Before giving the vote of thanks, I'm thankful to Amit Bhai for introducing the program held by that will be held by BCS on Wednesday with the CBDT member. So we can also ask the members of our study circle if they have any questions. We can forward them to Amit Bhai so that they can be resolved with the CBDT member. And as Amit Bhai mentioned during his presentation regarding the faceless assessment, that we as a chartered accountant, we also need change for this faceless assessment. Giving the email address, many times we have seen that even the chartered accountant gives his own email address. So all that practices will need to be changed now. Amit Bhai has very well brought to us the framework of the faceless assessment. What are the things that we need to take care going into the faceless assessment era, and that would have really benefited our members. That how do they plan the new coming of faceless assessments? I just fear one thing, Amit Bhai, when you said that they will be asking the books of accounts and the records. I fear that they don't ask the tally data from us while making the assessment.
Frankly speaking, Jainam, that is the only thing left now for them to do. And because everything else they already have, yeah. Khali accounts they don't have. So I think a day will come when accounts will also be maintained on the e-filing portal, and they will borrow from it whenever they want. This is of course in a lighter mode, but I agree with you. Yeah, they should not ask for any accounting data.
So Amit Bhai, I am really thankful to you for sparing the time. I know you had many problems, internet connectivity and everything, but still you managed to give such a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much on behalf of Vilaypalle Study Circle, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Amit Bhai.
Good day.
Thank you,
Good day.
Good day.
Yeah. Wish everyone good health and safe life. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.